Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this important presentation. Today, we have a giant in the area of writing, translation, and in many other areas of knowledge. Our guest today is Anthony Libera. He is a novelist, essayist, translator, and world-class expert on the works of Samuel Beckett, whose plays have been directed and staged in Poland and abroad. Concerning our speaker, as I said, he is a famous novelist. His first novel is Madame. It came out in 1998 and has been translated into a bunch of languages like Catalan, Czech, Dutch, English, Finnish, French, German, Greek, Hebrew, Hungarian, Italian, Lithuanian, Norwegian, Portuguese, Russian, Slovak, Slovenian, Spanish, Swedish, and Turkish. His most recent novel, Be Well, Good Sir, it came out in 2013, which encompasses sensation, mystery, and melancholy, is a homogeneous triptych contemplating the question of time, coincidence, and destiny. Libera's incredible musical intuition permeates his literary works. Today, our honorable guest will talk about whether art is a kind of harmony or chaos. We'll give him time to make his presentation, and then we will create a kind of dialogue with him, and also you are kindly requested to engage in this presentation. Okay, my friend, go on.
Yes? All right. You know, it's a little bit to be embarrassed to speak myself about myself. Anyway, what can I say? First of all, I feel a writer, original writer, although I wrote almost 3 or 4 original books. I mean, Nouvelle Madame, 3 novellas, and probably most important, my book, it's Godot Shadows. It's kind of intellectual autobiography. It's my life connected with work and life of Samuel Beckett, one of the greatest writers from my point of view, and I describe the whole story why I began to be interested in Beckett works ever, and how I start to translate it and direct it in the theater, etc. So it is almost since my birth, because I was born in 1949, exactly in April. So it was exactly 3 months after Beckett finished his famous play, Waiting for Godot. So it's my mother produced me, and Samuel Beckett produced Waiting for Godot. You know, it's a coincidence, very important for me. And another anecdote which I describe in this book is that the first performance for the maturity people in the theater was Waiting for Godot. Why? Because it was 5th production of Waiting for Godot in Europe, after France, England, German. So it was in the very important political period in Poland after 56, you know, after changes, political changes, and everybody was very interested in Western theater, Western literature, and tickets for this production was completely sold out. And my parents knew the stage director of this performance, and one day he rang that he had 2 places free for them. And at this moment, I decided to make a blackmail for my parents. You know, I wanted to. I don't want to stay myself home. So my father decided to take me to the theater. I was 8 years old. So the first performance which I saw in my life was Waiting for Godot. You know, it's a second point of this. And but you know, this is a coincidence, and I mythologize all these events in this book, jokingly mythologize. But when during my studies, I realized what, in a matter of fact, Beckett wrote, what kind of writer he is. And at this time, I began to read and write about him more deeply. And now I translated all his plays and many of prose, essays, poetry, etc. And my meeting with him in '78 in Paris was extremely interesting, and we been in letters before and after it, and his political attitude was outstanding because, for example, after martial law was declared in Poland, he started to send a food parcel for me, for my friends. You know, it's an extraordinary attitude, moral and political.
Okay, why are you attracted to the works of Samuel Beckett in particular? Why? What's the source of attraction? Why Beckett in particular? Is it personal, or it is connected with this chaotic history of Poland, or what?
Both. First of all, it's a personal point of view. Like you know, it's a personal connection. It's similar point of view of the world, of the life, of the everything. You know, emotionally. Yeah. That's the first point. The second point, it's of course the meaning of this literature. So in my point of view, Beckett realized that in our civilization, I mean our European civilization, Judeo-Christian civilization, lost the direction, lost the sense, meaning, metaphysical meaning. And as you know, probably Beckett was a kind of assistant of Joyce, right? And when Joyce finished his most known novel, Ulysses, he told that, look at this. This is a world without God. He said about his book, right? Yeah. The image of the world in Ulysses. And when Beckett got a Nobel Prize, in a laudation for him, this critic who wrote this speech said or wrote that the whole Beckett writing, how Beckett works. It's a one great essay about this Joyce sentences. Yeah. Look at the word without God. How word without God looks like.
Okay. Another point connected with Beckett. You are interested in him as a dramatist. We know that he wrote a novel, but most of your works come in the form of fiction. Did you write any plays, or do you think that it's easier to write novels rather than plays, or you think it's a matter of audience reception by audience, or what?
So
for you as a writer.
I wrote a play on the commitment of Royal Shakespeare, Royal Court in London. But it's a very special kind of play. It's a one act play. It was exactly in 1990 when British audience was very interested of political changes in Eastern Europe, and they asked me to write a dialogue, platonic dialogue between two persons who discuss what does it mean, these political changes in Eastern Europe. Is it true or fiction or hypocrisy? You know, can we trust or can we shouldn't trust for this? So the title was Eastern Promises, and these two persons who discuss in Hyde Park, of course, optimist and pessimist. You know, the name of one is Phil, like, for example, Timothy Garton Nash, and second one is a Fob, like Alain Besançon, French historian, very skeptical, very rather pessimist than optimist. This kind of dialogue, but you know, it's a kind of essay in a dialogue, but it's not real drama. It's not real play. I wrote also some libretto for opera, but it's something else. But speaking about Beckett, of course, the fiction for him was primarily. First was trilogy, novels, short stories, etc. He started to write drama in end of 40s. Yeah. Because he was very tired of the gloomy, very dark atmosphere of his prose. Sure.
Okay, I will ask you to talk about your works. We'll go back to Beckett later on. Okay, you published the last two novels in the last 10 years. One of them is translated into different languages. Why is this one in particular is being translated? What is it, because of theme? Because of what?
I don't know. No, it's interesting for me. I don't know why. But probably there is two reasons. One reason, it's a grotesque, comical image of Polish reality during communism. But it is not a black image. You know, it's not terrible things like Solzhenitsyn or many other writers who described the really hell in the Soviet Union, in Poland, in other communist countries. But it is rather closer to Kundera point of view, you know?
Yes, I know. Milan Kundera.
Yeah. So it's a grotesque, in Polish literature, mrożek. It's a similar way. You know, it's a parody,
Yeah.
mockery of this very nasty grey word. This is probably the first reason. And second reason, it's proper that the action take place in the school. And you know, this is...
Will you give us an idea about it briefly? About
it's a very universal subject, you know, because everybody goes to school, and the atmosphere of the school, it's everywhere, it's similar, you know. And love of the pupil, young pupil, to very attractive professor of French language. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a kind of you know, myth.
Do you write within a specific genre, or do you have you are a follower of a genre in like fantasy or in
No.
what kind of writer would you describe yourself? What kind of fiction writer would you describe yourself?
I don't know. You know, it's
No, you write within the postmodern.
no. You know,
Traditional-
it's also it's a, you know, I feel as a epigon of the first period of modernism.
That's it.
First period of modernism.
Okay.
So I feel the parody. Parody is a, you know, my genre.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, but parody in a high meaning.
Yeah.
You know, like Ulysses is a parody
Sure,
of Odyssey,
definitely.
or
Yeah.
Dr. Faustus is a parody of Faust.
Exactly.
And many other examples. So that the normal literature, it's done, it's finished, and now it's what only possibility is a parodize what was in the past.
Yeah. What kind of audience you have in mind when you are writing?
Sorry?
Audience. What kind of readers you have in mind when you are writing?
In Poland or in...
Yeah, in general, when you are writing, do you have a specific audience? You know that this book is going to be presented to middle-aged people,
Yes,
poor classes, or whatever.
No, rather very narrow class of people. It's I'm not sure it's comprehensible. This very Polish word intelligentsia.
Yeah, intelligentsia.
You know, this is because it is not exactly intellectuals.
Yeah.
But you know, it's educated people, sensible for irony, for kind of.
Do you think it's easier to write fiction rather than to write for the stage, theater? It's easier to write fiction rather than to write for theater?
Yes, I prefer write fiction than theater. Yeah.
Okay, far away from Beckett, what are the other international novelists that you admire, or you read, or you came under their impact from your perspective?
Yes, I have two completely different writers than Beckett, which I'm reading all the time. It's a Thomas Mann, especially Magic Mountain, which I know by heart almost,
Yeah.
and Vladimir Nabokov. Nabokov, it's a, you know, it's a kind of ideal for me. He was a genius,
Yeah.
really. So I am very impressed of his all works, his novels, of course, but not only, because his essays on literature is also very instructive and fantastic written.
You didn't admire any Female authors?
Jane Austen,
Okay.
Emily Bronte,
Okay. What do you think of Hemingway? Did you read Hemingway?
yeah.
What do you think of Hemingway?
Not necessarily. You know, it's opposite of my soul and my sensibility. You know, it's a man of power. You know, and man of activity. You know, it's I'm rather introspective.
But what about this existentialist element that connects him with Beckett? Is there any similarity? The existentialist element in Hemingway, does it have any similarity with Beckett's?
You know, but Hemingway, first of all, it's the bells. This is a Spanish war, right?
Yeah.
You know, so I completely disagree with this kind of description of this war. It's a completely false, in my opinion, of course. So, and the most interesting piece by Hemingway for me, it's Old Man and Sea. This is one I accept, and this is interesting. And as far as I remember, the Nobel Prize was for this short piece.
Sure, definitely. Okay, what about the why Samuel Beckett is popular in Poland? Is it because of war, because of the Holocaust, because of the chaos that came over Poland, and then Polish people found it in his work, or what? Or are there any
It's
other
a very
elements?
good question. It's a really very good question. Because of poverty and because of not being unhopeless in the completely hopeless situation. You understand?
Yes,
that,
sure.
We are, for example, in a completely hopeless situation, and in spite of that, we trust that it will be better. This is, and this element in Beckett works, it's very strong. First of all, in Waiting for Godot, but not only.
Sure. This is for your generation. But what about the young generation in Poland, the post-communist generation? When they read Beckett, is Beckett still having the same popularity now?
No, it's changed. Now it's less. This popularity is much, much less. But now Beckett became an author, the giant of form. And of course, this is opposite from postmodernism attitude.
Sure.
But we have also some society, some group of people or group of artists who like to produce literature and art very formally. That the art, it's first of all, it's form, and Beckett is a pattern for them.
I tell you something. When Beckett was translated into Arabic in the early 50s, specifically Waiting for Godot, and the play was presented in Arab theater, people didn't understand anything from the play, and the play failed. Now, and after all the problems in the Arab world, and the civil war running in Syria, Iraq, and Libya, Beckett became very popular once more, and his plays are being accepted and widely read. So the man is connected. Do you think that he's connected with the idea of chaos?
Yes, but it's a rather of poverty, Beckett was, as you know, Beckett was a child of very rich man.
Yeah.
You know, he had no financial problem, no problem in his youth,
Yes,
in
I
his
know.
childhood.
Yeah.
And although he felt very strongly the situation of poor people, and for example, he agreed during apartheid time in South Africa.
Yeah.
He wanted that all person in Waiting for Godot were played by black people, and I can give more example that he felt very strongly the situation of the poverty, and the second-hand how say people which are in the very difficult circumstances, very difficult conditions.
Okay. Well, coming back to your work, the idea of translation of Polish literature into other languages, do you think this is a good idea? You like it? You believe that translation is important for spreading literature around the world? Or we come to this Italian proverb about the translator is a traitor, and then what's your intake in
You
this?
know, it's depend of the kind of literature. If the piece is written normal language, you know, everything you can translate. Of course, such a work like last novel by Joyce, Finnegan's Wake, it's almost impossible.
Yeah,
And many Beckett's later piece of prose or poetry, it's extremely difficult to translate and probably impossible to translate.
Yeah.
But if you use normal language like Nabokov,
Oh, yeah, sure.
yeah, you can translate everything without, of course, a good translator, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So now, recently, I did an experiment writing a novella, musical novella, to combine two languages, normal, you know, it's a human language, and literary language, and musical language. And I pose a question: is it possible to translate any meaning of music into our human language? What does it mean, music? You know, if you listen, you know, Fifth Symphony of Beethoven, right?
Yeah.
And the first thema, 4 tones. This is a knocking of lot. What does it mean? And this is a good idea to translate music into human language or not. This is a thema of my novella, Toccata C major by Schumann.
Okay, will you give us an idea about your future projects, if you have any project in mind now?
Now I complete translation of all Sophocles tragedies. So I did a new canon in Polish, seven tragedies by Sophocles, and it will appear in this autumn, in this year.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. Do Polish people translate a lot, or they have Polish works being translated by other languages, statistically speaking?
In my opinion, now, since 20, 30 years, almost the main production of Western literature is translated into Polish. Almost everything. The most interesting, the most important things. And otherwise, it's different. It's depend also on politics.
Did you translate South American literature? Latin American literature?
Yes, it was very trendy. It was very trendy in 70s. All writers. I spoke to Fuentes. I met once in Poland, and we spoke. And he was surprised how many titles, how many authors of South America is translated into Polish.
Did you read any novel by an African writer or an Arab writer before?
African?
Yeah.
You mean Kutsi? It's South Africa.
Yeah.
Yes, Kutsi is very popular in Poland.
Really?
Yeah.
But what about Arabic literature? Did you have any idea about?
First of all, the Nobel Prize laureate. Yeah.
And Mahfouz,
yeah.
Egyptian. Yeah, Mahfouz.
Yeah.
This is the only thing. Okay. Will you give us an idea about the current literary scene in Poland now? What are the movements? What are the expectations of audience, readers, for writers? What are the dominating literary paradigms in fiction? Which is more important now? Do people read poetry, for example, in Poland?
In my opinion, now it's a time of changes. You know, it is not stabilization because you know the Polish literature wants to be like Western.
No.
Yes, but it is it's not correct now. And other people other writers looking for a Polish way for literature, but it is not enough universal. So, you know, this is a long processes. I think it's only after 10, 20 years something new will be observed.
Okay, regardless of the political antagonism with the ex-Soviet Union,
Yeah.
do you think Soviet literature is a great literature or not? And if yes, what are the most popular or most famous Soviet writers in Poland?
Of course, Master and Margarita by Bulhakov.
Okay.
Bulhakov, this novel, it's very good translated and read by, you know, it's many copies of it sold out.
I think Russian was a second language in Poland during the
No,
communist?
not anymore.
Really?
Not
But in the
anymore.
past it was there?
During communist time, yes, it was.
So you know Russian?
A little bit, yes, because I learn Russian in school because it's obligatory.
I see. What's your perspective on Anthony Chekhov? What kind of author is?
Chekhov is very popular in the theater, and of course it's one of
Do you
the
have
greatest.
do you have his
It's
works translated into Polish?
many translations in many times. You know, it's it's still new translation of Chekhov, especially for the theater. Yes,
Do you know
he's
that-
very
Do you know
popular.
that Russian authors, all of them, were translated into Arabic many years ago? It's very popular in the Arab world. Very popular. They're even much more popular than people in Europe or in America. The Russian theater and the French theater in terms of translation. Okay, now we'll give our audience an opportunity to engage in this discussion because I am showering our friend with questions. So, do you have any question, any engagement with this great man, this well-experienced novelist and translator? I'm interested in what he's doing now to translate Greek theater into Poland. This is a wonderful thing. Do you have any question? Yes, sir. Yeah, just take the microphone, take your time.
I want to repeat the question which is in the title and ask you for answer. Harmony or chaos, which does art express?
You know, it depends of our point of view. If we understand the whole world as a harmony, the art describe harmony. If we think that the world is a chaos, so we express as an artist a chaos. You know, it is not exactly, it's not directly. First of all, it's our point of view, how we understand the world. For example, Beckett told me and even wrote in his literature that he described chaos because for him the world, even civilized world, it's a completely chaos. So do you remember probably the very known book by French biologist Jacques Monod, Hasard et Nécessité, means random or necessary. Of course, this is a scientist book. Or his question is, what word is what rules are in the world? It's a necessity or random. And I think this is a very actual, very modern question for our times, where the crisis of the fight, the crisis of the religion, it's very strong. And especially artists and writers ask himself and ask to the audience where we are now.
Okay, back again to the same thing about chaos or harmony. You know, most of the literary schools in the 20th century, or they say that when you describe a world in chaos, the form itself has to be chaotic, the way you write. Do you believe in this? Are you doing it in your work?
Yes, you know, we trust that in a microcosmos, we can organize order, and especially musician. You know, we have instruments, we have sounds, and we have a system, musical system. And in this system, we can produce something which has meaning, which has a sense, harmony. But it's a very small scale. It's a only human scale. But in the macrocosm, we don't know. You know, probably the human race decided to limit themselves to have possibility to make any order, any sense, like a piece of very strict poetry. For example, Dante, terzina, the kind of verse.
Yes.
This is a form, and this is, of course, a harmony. But it's a, it's a not objective harmony. It's our harmony. It's a human harmony.
Okay. What's the advice you would give to new generation of writers, people who'd like to be novelists or short story writers?
It's a difficult question because now, as you know, the production of books is much more bigger than the audience. So it's a many ways of understanding literature, entertainment, political, social, it's many ways, but I still looking for a literature which to be an oracle. It's a prophecy. It's a language and image between science and religion. You have many possibilities of seeing the world in the scientist way, in the religion way, and the artistic way. And in artistic way, you combine the experience of science, of nature, right, and religion, and it is this kind of this is a purpose of literature. It's the highest level of literature.
Do you mean that you don't write literature for entertainment? You don't believe in it?
But it's an entertainment. It's an entertainment. It is not a serious purpose. So entertainment, we can spend time in many ways, right?
Yeah.
Reading books, excitement,
Yes.
thrillers, etc. Even psychological subjects.
Sure.
Yes, but it's still entertainment, and for example, Beckett's literature, it's not entertainment.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
No.
So you believe in a literature that approximates science or comes close to science, religion, philosophy?
Between science and religion. It's a gray, the gray field between science and religion.
So this is harmony, not chaos.
But science gives us very dark image of the universe.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, at this important and philosophical note, let us express our thanks to our great author, Anthony Libera, for this beautiful and well-established presentation. Thank you, sir. Thank you.